All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Reckoning of Fallen Gods, Book 2 in Tales of the Coven by R.A. Salvatore. So, um, the first book review I already have on my channel, so go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. This book takes place immediately after the events of that book, like almost like right after those. And it continues to follow Talmich and Alwyn as they continue to confront different dangers of the lake and their culture, or the cultures of the lake and what's going on there. So, with this being a second book in the series, if you like the first book, I would say go ahead and read this book too. It's pretty decent. It's definitely worth a read. It's not like spectacular, but it's a good read. So, because I'm gonna go into spoilers starting now. Uh, this this book. So the not the beginning part. A lot of the beginning focus on Talmich and a few other characters. It's more of the later parts. There is Alwyn kind of shows up a little bit in the beginning. She does some cool stuff with her magic, but it's really after, like, I would say probably like the first half of the book that we get, like, she's basically dumped into the what is it, the mouth of God, this giant pit basically, to be killed, and we get her trials down there, and like it's within these crystal caverns where she can get more gems and stuff like that. And it is really this part where she starts discovering different aspects of the magic, and in turn that's used as character development for the growth within herself and kind of taking her own agency within this tribe that's very much like a patriarchy. And I think one of the coolest scenes is when she tattoos herself as like a I'm taking control of my own body from you, which I think is a really cool scene. And I mean, and also there's a lot of really cool gemstone magic. So I'm really excited to see where it goes in book 3, which I think might be the final book of this. So, let's start off with let's do some critiques. Biggest One of the biggest things of this book is it does not feel like the entirety of a book. I think the first book felt like it had a pretty good like beginning and conclusion. It definitely felt like it left a lot to be told, and like you could tell this was moving on, and I think I mentioned that. This one really does not feel like a book on it. Like it does feel like it's the middle bridging, like the beginning and the conclusion. Like it's doing all this setup. There's a bunch of this cult, um, this god cult that's I think God King cult. I can't remember specifically what their parts were kind of boring to me, honestly. But they end up breaking into the plateau. That's kind of the ending of the book. Alwyn escapes. There's all this setup, but there's no real, like, I would say, final conclusions. It's like, so yeah, there's some battles and stuff like that, but I feel like it's mostly like setting up this third book. So I think a lot of it is really going to be determined for me on whether or not the third book is super solid. Because if it's not, I think that'll take down the series as a whole, because it's doing a lot of prepping for that. Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember this part. So there is this what's his name? He's one of like the I think we get a brief part of him in the beginning of the first book, and he's kind of like a side character throughout the whole series up to this point. And there's a part where he's like one of like the hunters. I can't remember his name. Uh, there's a part where he sees Alwyn with gosh, why can't I think of his name? The slave boy. Why can't I think of his name? I lost it. But basically, there's like they have this relationship that they're building and stuff like that, and he, due to the culture, I get it that he's been raised to believe that like this is disgusting, like she shouldn't have that relationship with him. But he was kind of felt like he was growing, and there was a lot of like character development, and then he ends up betraying her. And then we get a perspective chapter of him, and he's like, why did I do this? And I'm like, I don't know. Why did you do this? And like, it's tried to be justified by his, it's like Salvatore's trying to justify it by saying like, oh, it's his culture. His culture has made him kind of like think about it like this. And like, he's starting to realize that that's not right, but he's had like months in this cave. And I thought he had already come to that conclusion because he's kind of already talked about that. So it felt very like, I need to force this situation and I'm kind of stuck in a corner. I guess I'm going to do it this way. So I did not like that too much. Yeah, I mentioned this a little earlier, but the God King cult was kind of meh for me. Honestly, those chapters were super boring. I get it. I get why it's there because you're setting up your villain. You're trying to give perspective of another culture that's attached to this lake and this area. But I could not care less about them. So I hope that gets fixed in the next book. But, I know they're being set up as like the main issue for the characters to overcome. And you kind of need someone like that when you bring in, what's his name? Wyndon. Because he's a character from the Demon War saga that's very powerful, and he's shown very powerfully in this book. So, yeah, overall, I kind of already said this, but I think it's really going to be up to book 3. Like, this series is very dependent on the conclusion. If it doesn't conclude well, then it's going to really, really hurt it because everything is setting up for the finale. And that's it. So a weak finale means that like everything that I've read up to this point feels kind of pointless. But we'll see. I have hopes. Tempered hopes, but hopes. I do feel like this book overall, book 2, was kind of boring. I think Alwyn discovering herself was the best part of this book, and like her chapters were like the only thing that really got me through this book, because I was just so excited to like find out what happened next to her. But yeah, definitely gonna be up to book 3, so we'll see how that goes. I'll be reading that at some point soon. I'm taking a little break and doing a couple other books first, and then I'll get back into this series and finish it out. So a little shorter this time, but that's gonna be it. Not a whole lot to talk about with this book. I think this book's a little shorter than the first book too, so there's not as much content to dive into. But let me know what you guys think. You can post down in the comments below whether or not you've read it or agree or disagree with me. Be sure to leave a like, and always be sure to subscribe. Helps out the channel a lot, and I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks.